Shannon is the director of our animated selection, An American Hero, Frank Nishimura. And she's also producer, editor, and photographer with over 20 years of experience in the field of broadcast television and print and digital media. And she's been with the Seattle Channel, the City of Seattle's award-winning government access channel, for over 10 years. And she has earned several Northwest Emmys and the Kaleidoscope Award, a national award that recognizes television stations for their coverage of diversity and equity issues. So let's welcome Shannon to our channel. And we have about 10 minutes for a brief question and answer session. I just wanted to start off with a first one, maybe to get us warmed up. But I was fascinated by the choice of kind of blending in animation with, I guess, I don't know what you call it, with documentary?
There's archival footage, as well as footage that we recreated, and stills and audio as well that we mixed in with the art from the graphic novel.
Did that come as an inspiration from the graphic novel, or how did you choose to present it this way?
In my haste to get out the door this morning at 6:30 in the morning out of Seattle, I forgot my prop, which was the graphic novel. So a few years ago, the Wingwood Museum and the Nichi Bei Foundation, which is the foundation that's associated with the Nichi Bei Veterans Hall in Seattle, they received a grant from the National Park Service in conjunction with the Preservation of Historic Sites to create a graphic novel that would help capture stories of the Japanese American incarceration experience. And so this first graphic novel, which they published, was about Nichi veterans. And they collected stories from veterans in Seattle. I think there's 5 or 6 stories in the graphic novel. And once that was published, they approached me at the Seattle Channel to see if there was any way that we could animate the stories. Sure. We're not animators. The Seattle Channel is the government access station in Seattle, and you might be familiar with your government access station. It's Channel 21 on cable. It shows your council meetings. That's the television station. I'm currently the general manager of that, and I've been there for over 10 years. And luckily, we've been able to use the platform to really do some great documentary works, some news programming, public affairs, community and arts coverage. And so, it was not out of the ordinary to try to do something like this, but it was out of the ordinary for us to try to do animation. We're not animators. But the way that the graphic novel was drawn by Matt Sasaki and written by Larry Matsuda, it lent itself, as long as we could stay in the Adobe Creative Suite, to be able to animate the story, the artwork that Matt had drawn, and then script out what Larry had written. So this is actually the second animated film we've done. The first one, which was about Shiro Kashino, another Seattle area Nichi veteran, had a little less of that archival footage. It had some, but because Frank is still alive, he was gracious enough to let me follow him around with a camera to the Memorial Day events and other things. And that sort of helped us bookend the piece so we could sort of see him now and look back in time so we could reflect on his story. And as you read the graphic novel, there are definitely natural points where you could sort of mix in that archival stuff, because it doesn't always, the graphic novel didn't always say specifically things that we could show in the archival. It took a lot of leaps because the audience already knows part of that history. So we brought it back even more so we could just say that history again.
Does anyone in the audience have a question that they'd like to ask?
Did it make any sense? I mean, the art is very expressionistic, and so that makes it kind of fun to animate. But I just wonder sometimes. It's always great to see it with a lot of people. We spend a lot of time just sort of sitting in edit phase, trying to make it work. So.
questions from the audience?
I want to thank you for the wonderful film, and what was great about it was very easy to follow, and the narrator kept it going, and so there weren't any really slow or down moments. But my question, it was very positive too, but I was wondering, was there anything about the racism that he faced as a Japanese American that maybe you wanted to include?
Well, we did go from the source material, and there wasn't necessarily those stories pulled out specifically. So I think there's only one thing we omitted from the actual story that's in the graphic novel, and that was this very long, drawn-out explanation of how much food he ate on the ship and how he didn't get sick. I mean, it was just like, okay, that's too much. So I spared everybody that, but there wasn't that explicitly in the story. There's a little bit more in the Shiro Kishino story, actually.
Thank you.
And we have a question.
I understand that the Puget Sound Hotel had 444 rooms, very large hotel. Were the customers mostly Japanese American, and then also what happened to did the hotel remain intact after the incarceration?
I don't know the history. It's not there now. I can't remember what year it was torn down, but it was probably in conjunction with there was many of the SROs in Seattle, like here in San Francisco, didn't meet fire code. And so they probably opted to tear it down after they couldn't outfit it with sprinklers. There's only a few hotels still in Seattle that they physically did fire watch. They didn't actually install sprinklers. They had people watch the hallways all night to keep those open. So I don't know as much about it after the war, but it's not standing now.
I think we have time for one last question from the audience. Does anyone have a question?
Did any piece of the graphic novel lend particularly well to inspiring the documentary?
The question is, did any part of the graphic novel inspired me for making the film? Is that right?
Yeah, any particular scene?
I mean, there's some challenges. There's some things like the horse, like actually making the horse run. Yeah, it's really hard to do that when it's just a straight drawing. So we learned something called the puppet tool. Some people will know what that is. And so it was fun to do those challenges. I think some other things that were challenging were how do we go from this one still of him learning how to hula while he's being going through training, and then it's switching to like a battle, going into combat. So balances like that, I think, were super challenging, but also really exciting to try out. And so it always became a combination of how do we animate it, how does the person read the script, what music goes behind it. We had a pretty amazing composer who scored the entire film, and I think he did an incredible job. So I don't know if that answers your question. Those are the challenging parts. But all of it, because they were single one-page panels of art, just was a real opportunity to try to make it move and make sense. And what do we cover when there's a really long passage of script cover? I mean, there is one section that I've watched this film many times, and I thought, oh, they're talking about moving to Post Falls, Idaho. We're showing training footage. It doesn't quite match up, but it was appropriate for the time because he was going to go into training, and while his parents were going to Idaho, so it's not quite one-to-one, but those are the kind of things that I guess challenge is the same as inspiration. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us. Let's